Hey, good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Well, at least it's evening while we're recording this beauty. Could be any time of the day or night, as far as I know, you're watching this. But if you are watching this, thank you for watching this. We certainly appreciate your support. And again, the season, it never crawls, it just flies by. And believe it or not, folks, after Friday, we will be 1/3 of the way done with the regular season in IHSA football, and that just tastes terrible coming out of my mouth when I say that. And again, looking forward to another big week of IHSA football, and definitely we are here on the Third and Leng Podcast because of this handsome fella joining me now, and we're here. We're going to break down 4A through 1A as well as 8-man football for week 3. We'll take a look back, obviously, at week 2 and some wild results, Matt. It's kind of a wild week, really, in all 4 classes. There were some upsets and some teams in the AP polls and some teams out of the AP polls and some moving up and moving down, and was not a dull week.
No, we had some upsets. We'll talk about some of that, and then we'll talk about some teams that are starting to really kind of maybe establish themselves. I think any coach would tell you that by the time you get to week 3, 4, or 5, usually 4 or 5, but since we're in a third of the season here, when you get there, then you kind of know maybe where you're at, where you're going to be at in the conference shakeup, and kind of what the tough games are. Hopefully, you're healthy, you're injury free, and you have a true direction of where your football program's going at. And I think with some of the games that we're going to talk about, there's some big games this week down in our neck of the woods, and it'll be really interesting because 1 through 4, things are starting to kind of we had a little turbulence. We had some things happen this weekend, and it's going to be fun to talk about.
Before we start digging in, and we definitely will dig in, I want to ask you and your coaching experience. Have you had a team over the years that maybe you thought you had a pretty good handle on after the first couple weeks, and they surprised you either way, whether the wheels fell off after week 2 or everything just kind of clicked and they really started getting into it? Or does it generally come to what your gut is, maybe even before even going into the season, where you think this group can be? Have you had a team like that in your coaching career?
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, I mean, one of my best teams I ever had was in 2008, and I had a dynamic team. I had one of the best rushers in the state of Illinois by a kid by the name of Colton Unzicker. He had over 5,000 yards of rushing, and he was kind of the talk of the town. Well, he had graduated, and we came back in 2009, and we kind of had we had a team that we didn't really know anything about, and it was a situation where we were 2-0 and we went over to play Lexington in week 3, and we ended up getting the heck beat out of us. And it was at that moment that we kind of transformed our team into more of a gritty, hard-nosed team. And I think sometimes these first 2, 3, or 4 games, you just kind of find out what you are, what you can do, what you can't do. And in that situation, we kind of took an average football team and made them into a really good football team. And it was because of kids that really just kind of bought in. We were 5-4, got in the playoffs, played Lexington again in the playoffs. We lost a heartbreaker 23-14 in week 10, and Lexington ended up going to the state championship and losing to Tuscola 14-7 with the Stendy kid. But what it was is sometimes kids will really surprise you.
Yeah.
This group that I had, they were living kind of in the limelight or the shadows of the year before, and so they really didn't have an identity. And I think some of these teams, they're going to find their identity. At least they're going to attempt to, and every coach wants to try to see you get better from week 1 to week 2, and then week 2 to week 3, you kind of have an idea of what you're about.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, we're going to start in 3A this week. We're going to jump around a little bit because when we're talking about upsets and results that I thought caught a lot of people by surprise, this one resonated throughout the state. It really did. In Class 3A, previously number 1 ranked Princeton lost to Morrison 22-21. And again, that's a 1A Morrison team. So again, Princeton, as I mentioned, previously number 1 ranked, they're down to 6th this week in AP, but still staying in the poll. Matt, just seemed like a result that a lot of people weren't expecting, but I guess you certainly never say never.
Well, this is a big, kind of a statement game for Morrison. Morrison over the years has kind of been up and down, but they've had some years where they were really good. I know you're going to hear the name Bielema because of our head coach at the University of Illinois. And there was a Bielema that coached at Morrison that won a couple of state championships. In this game on Friday night at Princeton, the Bielema kid was the quarterback, and he ended up getting hurt in the game. It was a 19-14 game late in the fourth quarter, and Princeton ended up coming back to go up 21-19, and with literally like a minute left in the game, this Bielema kid gets hurt, so they had to bring in a backup quarterback, and I'm trying to think what his name was. Oh gosh, I can't think. I think it was Chase Newman. It was a halfback. They inserted him at quarterback, and he comes in. The first play he makes is basically a 35-yard pass down to the goal line, and then before you know it, you find out like one guy that maybe can do something you didn't know he existed, and so you inserted a freshman by the name of Josh McDearman, and he would attempt his first ever varsity field goal from the 18-yard line, and the snap was perfect, and they end up winning 22-21 over a well-coached Princeton team. So that's a big win. Anytime you can go on the road and beat somebody like that, and I can live back in my past. I can remember when we went over to Lexington, and they were number 2 in the state, and we end up beating them, and that does a lot for the confidence in your team. And so, kudos to Morrison.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's obviously a huge upset. So again, I'll go through 3A since we started in 3A, and let's go through the top 10 this week. Again, these are Associated Press Week 3 rankings. So in Class 3A, Byron at number 1, Williamsville at number 2, Montini at 3, St. Joe Ogden moving up again. We'll get to that in a minute. Olympia is at number 5. Princeton, as we mentioned previously, number 1, moved down to 6 after the loss to Morrison. Wilmington at 7, Tolono Unity at 8. Dupec in this week as the number 9 team. They step in and they replace Eureka. Eureka, previously number 8 ranked, lost to Shelbyville 44-36. So again, Dupec put in 3A poll at number 9. And then there were a little bit of movement here as well, Matt. Let's talk a little bit about St. Joe Ogden. They get a win. They beat Tolono, who was ranked number 8. So Tolono basically stays the same, but St. Joe Ogden moves up a bit. So again, 38-35, St. Joe Ogden gets the win over Tolono. So that had some impact in the 3A rankings. And then obviously Princeton moving down from 1 to down to number 6 this week. Also need to talk about Reed Custer. Reed Custer lost. They lost to Johnsburg 40-37. So they dropped down a little bit. They were previously ranked number 6, but they do stay in at number 10. And that's a tough game. That's a tough game for Reed Custer. First of all, having to make the trip from Reed Custer to Johnsburg on a Friday is never easy. Trust me, I've done that trip. It is not fun. The other part of it is, a really close game against Johnsburg. And again, from an enrollment standpoint, definitely generally a much larger school than Reed Custer, but at least the Comets stay in the top 10 for now, number 10. Thoughts? Anything else sticks out in your mind in 3?
Yeah, no, I listened to a little bit of what you guys have talked about on the radio show, and I think anytime you have a lengthy trip, that can do something to kids. Both teams, both programs have a little bit of storied football programs, but that's a long trip, a hard-hitting game. I know down here in our neck of the woods, we had two big games that kind of show you polar opposites of it. For us, our St. Joe game at Tolono Unity kind of turned the ball over late in that game. St. Joe has a good football team. They are explosive on the offensive side of the ball. They're 2-0. That's just a really good win. You had probably over 4,000 or 5,000 people there at that game. Fireworks. Again, like I said, it's the country. It's the cathedral in the country. Scott Hamilton has a wonderful facility and just a lot of passion about that. Again, I don't know anything, but I wonder how many more St. Joe Tolono games, we will see how long Scott Hamilton will be around. They'll probably meet up. They'll probably meet up in the playoffs. So that's something to think about. In terms of a long bus trip, my friends back in Stanford Olympia, they had just a crazy 2.5-hour bus trip over to Pittsfield. It was tied 14-14 at halftime, and the kids really didn't come ready to play. I know Eric was upset. They come out in the second half, and they flexed their muscles, and they won 35-14, which, Olympia now is ranked in the top 5. They got Chase Litweiler back. The running backs are all back.
Yeah,
and it sets up a colossal big-time matchup. And, I mean, it's a big-time matchup with Athens. Athens has everybody back. They'll probably be a formidable opponent in 1A or 2A. I think they'll go 1A, but they have everybody back. So returning from that team are all conference players. Corey Craig at fullback, Cameron Begard at running back, Braden Leathers at linebacker, the superintendent's son. So just a shout out to Scott Laird today. He gave me some information on the team. Zach Laird is a tight end and outside linebacker. And then Drew Cushman, they run this wing T offense, but Drew Cushman is their quarterback, and he adds an element of passing the ball. That game's at Stanford Olympia. It will be packed, and I think the most important play of the game, of course, is going to be the coin toss, because it's going to be a quick, fast game. Eric will not throw the ball. Ryan Knox will not throw the ball. It's going to be who wins the game up front in the trenches.
Before we move on, the one thing I want to mention, we're talking about bus rides, and I mentioned Reed Custer and Johnsburg. I think what a lot of people probably small school outside of Chicagoland don't realize when it comes to bus rides, it can go many different ways. It could be you hit no traffic, you go right through, no delays at all, or you can hit traffic the moment you hit the expressway and stay in that traffic and crawl from Reed Custer to Johnsburg on a Friday night. It might take you 3.5 hours to get there. It's the uncertainty, and there's nothing worse, and this. There's nothing worse than being in a bus going more than 10, 15 miles an hour for multiple miles. And, you think adults get stir crazy. How do you think a bus full of teenagers getting ready to play a football game are? So it has an impact. I truly believe it does. Again, not making excuses for anyone, but it's a lot to overcome sometimes. It's a lot to deal with.
We talk about the support staff for all these football programs, and we say it takes an army to take care of these kids. You're going to need to get a Subway sandwich in them. You need to get a Gatorade. You need to get a cookie, a banana.
Yeah.
And you need to do all that stuff. I know just here recently, I went with my friend Andy Romine, and we drove down to Carlisle to watch a JV football game. And, that was tough driving. That was about 2 hours, and I got a little car sick myself, and I finally got my Gatorade, and I felt good. But, one thing we need to kind of think about too is the heat. You're sitting in a bus, and you're plopped on your butt. That's tough for the kids to get up and do things. They have to hold their bathroom breaks in, and so
playoff time.
It's tough.
Yeah, playoff time, depending upon your finances, maybe you're in a luxury bus, a little bit better. Regular season, you're in no luxury bus. So unless you're going 300 miles, you're not in a luxury bus.
You're toughing it out, and you better drink your water, and you better stretch your legs.
And one of the best coaches that I know, that I've had the pleasure to know all these years, that handled travel as well as anyone, and the guy should literally write a book on it, how to handle it, was Tim Doherty when he was at Edwardsville. I mean, they would travel to Chicago on a Friday and a game day. They'd handle it. They'd come up. It was like Patton's Army, watching how they handled everything from the medium stop in between, to the stretching period, to the warm-up period, to getting back on the bus, to the meal time. I mean, and the moment that game would end, 15 minutes, they would be there. They would be back on that bus and ready to go and get out of there. And I guarantee you they got back to school sooner than they thought they were going to. And that's how well and how prepared. And like you said, you have to have an itinerary. And, any good coach will tell you that it's the parent group. It's the booster club group. It's like, hey, we're leaving at 3:45. We need to have the meals there by 3 o'clock. We need to have a brown sack lunch.
These kids are kids. They've been sitting in the classroom all day. They probably have to go to the bathroom. We have to feed them. And it's just, and you can tell a lot. Like I remember when I was at Olympia last year, I would watch teams, as they rolled in. And then I would give Eric the firsthand report on that. I'll be like, okay, they all have a duffel bag and it's all sitting there on the sidewalk. This is a legit program. And they just came in with their sack lunch. They'll be ready to play football here. And they line all their footballs and all their equipment up on the side. They're ready. Yeah. Because you just, you're dealing with a lot of the unknowns, and you don't want anybody to be kind of uncomfortable. So let's feed them, let's rest them, let's stretch them, and let's go play football.
All right, so we're going to move on to 1A. We'll work our way 1A, and then we'll kind of work our way back up to 4. So we'll go back down to 1A. The week 3 AP polls in 1A. Lena Winslow at 1, Forest at 2, Althoff at 3, Camp Point Central at 4. Just the flip-flop there between Camp Point and Althoff. Greenfield Northwest at 5. Newman up from 8 to 6. Fulton at 7. We're going to get into Fulton in a minute. So they are 0-2 yet. They still remain at number 7 in this week's AP poll. Morrison, as we mentioned, gigantic upset of 3A Power Princeton. They find themselves in this poll at number 8, which kudos to whoever votes in 1A. That's the right thing to do. Kewanee, Anawan, Wethersfield, they are down 2 spots from 7 to 9. And then we also have a Galena getting in the poll this week. Galena 2-0 now. They got a 49-0 win over West Carroll last week. So Galena is out from a week ago. The previously number 9 ranked team, Peru St. Bede. St. Bede had a 38-13 loss to Mercer County, so they get knocked out. And then also Dakota, number 10, they lost to Forreston 18-8. And again, Matt, we see it every year. It's the NUIC teams feasting on each other and knocking each other back and forth in the polls. And again, I mentioned Fulton. Fulton 0-2 and ranked. Well, Matt, can you guess who their 2 losses were to this year?
Pretty good football programs. I mean, like you said, they feed off of
Forreston and Lena.
And here's the deal, just reaching out to Coach Lauer, and he'll get back to me, but I do know this from doing my research, the Balin Domhoff kid from Fulton is the real deal. They also have a very good dual threat quarterback in Don Kramer. He's a dual threat. He can pass the ball. He can run the ball. He's a junior. So, again, Fulton, I know Pat does a good job up there because, there is so much talent in that conference, top to bottom, and just year in, year out, you got the physicality of these big kids. Dupac has now arrived into the rankings. Galena, a storied program for all these years. Now Ed Freed finally has some manpower, and they're winning games. They're 2-0. They've done a good job. They're physical up front. Fulton and Forreston, I don't need to really say too much about them except they've been in these battles before. Obviously, Alabama. Lena Winslow is who they are, and so it's going to be really interesting to see how that all unfolds. Dakota.
So does that make Forreston?
Dakota's good too. Everybody's good.
Does that make Forreston Georgia?
I don't know, but they're awfully good. There's a lot. Yeah.
Well, if I'm Fulton, I'm looking at this like, look, we might have just played our 2 toughest games of the year already.
Exactly.
We got 7 games left. We can run the table and go 7-2.
Exactly. You have to take it all into consideration. And I'll flip this because I stole this from Jay Lane, and the All-American linebacker down here at Illinois that does a little color analyst.
Yeah,
he says this about Illinois. And again, I'm not no plug towards the University of Illinois. I'm a diehard and all that, and I watched that game Saturday night. But they're taking it on a MAC team and Toledo. And now they got to go out to Kansas, and then they're going to come back and take on Penn State after Kansas. And, those first 3 games, they could be 1-2, 2-1, or 3-0. But here's the deal. Don't push the panic button. And I can guarantee you Fulton's not pushing the panic button because, like you said, they got 2 heavyweights out of the way. And now they can kind of regroup, take a big, deep breath and okay, are we injury-free? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? We got a lot of ball left to play because any coach will tell you, you want to be hitting your stride about week 7, 8, or 9.
Yeah, and by the way, Kansas is no pushover anymore.
Oh,
Kansas is going to be a good game with Illinois.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I wasn't going to Tuscola to watch a football game Friday night, I'd make that 5.5-hour trip, 6-hour trip out to Lawrence, Kansas. And I'm telling you right now, I would love to know the blueprint on player development and program development that Lance Leopold had at Wisconsin Whitewater. And
well, that's what it is. It's the same. It's the same
Buffalo.
program.
He went to Buffalo and won. Now he's at Lawrence, Kansas, winning. Watch out for the Kansas Jayhawks.
Same staff too. Coach Borland, defensive coordinator, goes back to Whitewater. I've known him for years. It's that same group and that same philosophy, and they get it done. They're great staff. But anyway, that should be a great game for Illinois and Kansas this weekend. One thing I want to throw out there in the 1A world, and I don't know how much our friends from the friends out west, how much they've talked about this, but I keep hearing rumblings. And believe it or not, even on my message board, my 8A private school heavy message boards have been talking about this. Is Althoff the team we've all been looking for to find challenges at NUIC downstate? Could that be Althoff this year?
It could be. At the same time, I think you're still going to have your usual suspects over there, and I think it's a limited number. I think Camp Point obviously is one of those teams. I think we have to kind of let things unfold, but yeah, it might be. Also, too, it'd be interesting hypothetically if Althoff gets in the state final and they're taking on Elena.
Yeah.
Will Lena be a little bit more beat up because of who they're playing in the Fultons and the Galenas and the Forestons and the Dupeks? And oh, by the way, Lena has to go down on a Saturday afternoon and they have to take on they're 0-2 now, but a Decatur St. Teresa team that I think will get better by week 5 or 6.
Yeah. It's interesting for sure. Like I said, it's been a while, and some of the fans down that way are kind of talking a little bit. I mean, two big wins. I mean, obviously 46-13 over St. Teresa is no slouch, Matt, as you all know. So that's a nice win for Althoff.
Well, here's what I think what you were trying to ask me. I didn't really address the question. Could Althoff go into the state final game, let's just say hypothetically, and take on Elena? We talked about this several years ago. I think we talk about it every year, but I can remember one specific conversation we had. And you just said, I think we were talking on the radio, by the way. That's how long ago it was. And you said, it's going to take a special team to beat a Lena Winslow. If Lena rolls out there with their lay win jerseys, their black jerseys, and their swagger, what type of team could beat them? Okay. We've talked about this.
Yeah, it's like the Pittsburgh Steelers of the 70s. You just see the uniforms like, oh boy, here we go.
But you gave me the recipe. You kind of gave the viewers and the listeners the recipe, and that was, it's probably going to have to be some sort of spread team that has run principles and is extremely physical at the point of attack. Now, I've only seen two teams. I've only seen two teams that have maybe kind of scared Lena, and one of them was Tuscola, and the other one for maybe a half was Carrollton. They kind of played with them. They were spread, but they had run principles. I don't know. Is Althoff that team?
So we'll get off this, but here's one game I think everyone needs to look out for, okay, and really watch. And I guarantee you, this will end up drawing very curious eyeballs. And Matt Leng, this is right in your backyard. Week 9, you ready? Week 9, Althoff taking on Dupek at Illinois Wesleyan.
Wow.
Yeah. That'll be a very interesting game. That will get a lot of eyeballs and a lot of interest from both the NUIC and down in Southern Illinois as well. So
and we talked about this off air. We're getting more and more games at Illinois State and Illinois Wesleyan. And
I'm going this weekend. I've already been to Illinois State once already this year. I'll be back down there again Saturday doing radio for Lincoln Way Central and O'Fallon. So it's I love it.
Who knows? You might have 6-2 teams or 5-3 teams.
Yeah.
Who knows? You might have a 4-4 team. I don't know. That game could have some serious ramifications with what goes on in the playoffs.
But it's definitely one to keep on the calendar and look out for, because that's going to have a lot of implications, I have a feeling. So it'll just be interesting to see how well they match up or they don't. So, all right, we'll continue to move on. Let's go to 2A. We haven't talked 2A yet. So again, this is the AP polls for week 3 in 2A. Baroa is still number 1 in Class 2A, according to the Associated Press. Tri-Valley at 2, Seneca at 3. Matt, I've got a good Seneca story for you. Make sure I don't forget to tell you before we get out of 2A. Athens at 4, Bloomington Central Catholic at 5. And then we've got 3 new teams in. Johnston City is in at 6. El Paso Gridley is in at 7. Knoxville in at 10. Rockridge remains in at 8. They move up from 10 to 8. Bismarck drops down. They were originally at 5. They were down to 9. So who's out this week? Previously number 8 ranked Marion Central Catholic, the Hurricane, blew into Milwaukee and got blown out of town. Okay, kind of. It was a bad pun, but I tried my best. 46-39. The Hurricanes lost, so they're 0-2 on the year. Nashville, previously number 7 ranked Nashville, the Hornets, lost to Carterville 35-14. Come on, voters. That's a good Carterville team. Give my boys down in Nashville a little bit of credit here. Let them stick around. How many votes? Okay, they did get 11 votes, so not completely harsh. So Nashville out. And as we mentioned, previously number 6, Decatur St. Teresa lost to Althoff 46-13. So Matt, again, some shakeups, some new teams in, some other teams knocked around, and again, just not dull in 2A. There's quite a bit of action in 2A as well.
There's a lot of good football. It's interesting you talk about Nashville and Carterville. Nashville obviously has been a story in 2A over the last 2 years. And like you said, Carterville, they're going to be fine. The voters need to give them some love. We got some interesting games. I think what's neat about 1A and 2A, in our area down here, the Heart of Illinois Conference is just well represented. It has been in the state championship games. You have everybody from, Josh Roop over at Tri-Valley with Kate Dunkel at wide receiver, Cole Klein at running back. That's a formidable team right there. DMAC has probably one of the better defenses in the area. Tice Albritton is a linebacker that runs sideline to sideline. They just had a big win against Gibson City, 16-0. El Paso, I'm going to get back to them here in a minute, but a big game. I think this Friday night, I'm going to go to this. 2 of my good friends that have helped me in my personal life and in my professional life, Andy Romine and Toby Ballas. Farmington is going to be tough to beat, and Tuscola is going to have to play well. They're going to have to play well on defense. They've struggled a little bit. Lenny Semeni will get that defensive side of the ball rolling really good. Farmington, the wheels on the bus go round and round. Okay. And what I mean by that is they have 2 kids, 2 brothers, the Wheelwright brothers. Lane Wheelwright is a junior quarterback, and then Jack Wheelwright is a senior running back. They're just very, very solid. I talked to Toby about this game. They're going to have to be physical. They're going to have to shut down the quarterback for Tuscola. And then, his top three guys, they have the Logan Utt at running back and wide linebacker, and they're really solid up front with Caden Mowen. It's going to be a really interesting game. It's Farmington's driving over Friday night. Tuscola is kind of opening up their brand new stadium, and should be a lot of fun. So like you said, 1A and 2A, a lot of movement, but a lot of the same faces.
Yeah. So, all right. So my Seneca story, you ready?
There you go.
All right, here we go. So want to say hello and a shout out to all my new friends.
Did you just do a shout? You just did a shout out?
Did a shout out. I don't do a lot of those, as you well know. I limit my shout outs. But shout outs to all my new friends at Smitty's Bar and Grill in lovely Lenoir, Illinois.
Oh.
Drove through Seneca to get to Lenoir, Illinois. They're still celebrating the win over Morris in Seneca.
Nice.
Still. Whole town is green, all green.
What did you have to eat? What did you have to eat?
Getting there. So the wife discovered this place on Facebook. Okay. the largest pork tenderloin sandwich in the world. I mean, it's got to be. It's huge.
Edgy,
It's
your hands were
huge.
out here to your head. It wasn't that
Huge. Matt, I'm telling you, I will send you a picture when we're done of how big this sandwich was. And she loves it. I'm not a huge fan. She is. She loved it. I had wings. Schmitty said very good wings. It was wing night.
What kind of wings did you have? Did you have dry or wet or boneless or bone-in?
I had wet. I had wet with like a garlic parmesan, and then I also did a barbecue. So
okay. All right. Okay, I'm happy. That's good.
Yeah.
There's
nostalgia.
There's tradition.
Drove through Seneca.
Food.
Drove through some smaller towns and shout out. Had a terrific meal and some really nice people at Smitty's Bar and Grill at Lenora, Illinois. So there you go. Always trying to spread the word, Matt. Always trying to get out to people. All right, so let's take care of 2A. Let's move our way up to 4A. And again, this is the Associated Press poll for week 3 in Class 4A. Not a ton of change here, but we do have one team out. Previously number 6 ranked Rochelle. The Hubs lost to Morton. That's Central Illinois Morton. 27-26. And Matt, again, grading really hard on the scale here. That's a good Morton team. And generally a bigger, usually a 5A, maybe even 6A team in the Potters. But again, a tough loss for Rochelle, 1 point. So the Hubs are out. In this week is Geneseo, the Maple Leaf from the Western Big Six. They get a 27-7 win over Grays Lake Central. And so Geneseo in the number 10 in the 4A poll this week. Outside of that, it pretty much remained the same. Rochester at 1, IC Catholic at 2, Morris at 3, Richmond Burton 4, Boylan at 5, Mount Zion at 6, Wheaton Academy at 7, Carterville at 8, Murfreesboro 9. And as I mentioned, new in this week is Geneseo at 10. By the way, Matt, for your viewing and listening purposes, tomorrow evening, and I believe it's going to be at 7:25, I'm going to have Derek Leonard from Rochester on my WAO radio show. We are going to be talking about the new book written about the father-son Leonards, their story. Their book is out. It's called Victorious. We will have Derek Leonard on to talk about, obviously, his career and his thoughts on the book and how you can get the book. And thankfully, I don't have it in front of me, but I was sent a copy of the book today. It was, again, thanks to Derek and Ken, very nice, personalized and scripted on it. And so we'll have Derek on and we'll talk about that book and hopefully help them sell a few books and get the message out there. But Matt, I mean, we've talked about this before. Been blessed. I've had a front row seat for a lot of years now to that whole Leonard Bowl and seeing Derek come up, seeing Derek as a player and then grow into a coach. And, Ken is a relatively younger coach at Sacred Heart and develop and build that program up to the monster it's become. Just great to see it finally captured. Just got the book today, so I haven't started reading it yet, but my plan is to get it done within the next week or so. And it looks great. I'll have it with me tomorrow. We'll show everybody what it looks like, the cover and everything. And just excited to get to talk to them. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to have Derek on this week, and maybe next week we'll have Ken and the author on, and we'll get a little bit more into it. But thought you'd find it interesting.
What's nice about the Leonards, and I'll get the book too also, but I just think of the books that I've read, like with the Taylor Bell book, that he wrote about kind of the history of Illinois. I'm sure with the Leonards, they have, I don't know, a gazillion stories, a lot of names, a lot of traditions, a lot of, to be quite honest with you, a lot of probably some spirituality stuff, some core values.
Oh, for sure. No doubt.
The traditions of Rochester and Sacred Heart Griffith. I think when you get into those medium-sized schools, the 4A, 5As, those are neat traditions, which is a good segue of what I wanted to talk about because, Geneseo has kind of gone through a transformation. They, Larry Johnson is my first football coach that I ever coached with outside of Galesburg, Illinois, when he was at London Mills, Spoon River Valley High School. now London Mills co-ops with Lewiston and Cuba. And, it's out in the middle of nowhere. I was there for 2 years with him. And then he took off to Pittsfield, and then he ended up going to Geneseo and taking over. If you know anything about Geneseo football, Rock Island football, Augustana football, they've always run the wing T offense. Over the last 2 years, Larry got out of that. They are a spread team with run principles.
Matt, you with us?
Run game. And so it'll be really interesting to see how that happens, because it can work. I know, for example, Kevin Crandall at Rochelle has gone over to Sycamore and helped Coach Ryan with that run game, and so you can do it, and like I've stated this time and time again, that Kevin would say, there's different ways to skin the cat. Now, in today's bigger enrollments, 4A, 5A, 6A, all the way to 8A, you're spreading people out to try to knife them. And so it'll be really interesting to see how Geneseo does. They're 2-0. They're going to have their hands full as they come up here and start getting into the meat and potatoes of the Western Big Six.
Yeah, I by the way, I obviously said hello and had a real nice talk with Kevin Crandall on Saturday when I saw Geneseo, or when I saw Sycamore play Simeon out of Gately. And there's a guy that, when it comes to my career and what I've done, I mean, Rochelle was one of the early stops I made when I was doing this, and Kevin and his staff welcomed me with open arms, which I just didn't expect. And I mean, they were just fantastic. I mean, great hospitality. Still had one of the best pork chop sandwiches I ever had was at Rochelle, and just great guy, great coach. And, again, just one of those people that you never forget, that you run into in this business, and you just never forget that kind of personality. Just a great guy that treated everyone really well. So,
well, Coach Ryan, Sycamore, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. His brother was an okay coach at Metamora.
Yeah, I keep saying, and I truly believe this, that Joe's going to win a state title one of these days. He really is. Yeah. He's getting closer and closer every year. He's got a nice team this year. Got a lot of young kids back. He's got a lot. It's a nice team, and it's a young team too. So it's going to be fun to see them get better, and then look out for 2024, because 2024 they could be really loaded. So
yeah, now they've been at the doorstep knocking on that door, and they're ready to knock it down. And but again, I like that, because Kevin's always been kind of a obviously I work in the Coaches Association with him. Yep. He's kind of like he's our president. He is our boss. He is our godfather, like he is the guy. But back, I can remember when I was at Monmouth College in the early 90s, and he was coaching at Villa Grove, and, they were number 1 in the state, and he had James Fancher as a quarterback, back in the day. And then he left to go to Rochelle. At the time, Rochelle was nothing. They were not very good, and he went in there and established his system. And so I always like that when some of the older Tasky veterans, kind of, go in there and say, okay, that's fine. The game's changed. It's evolved, but we can still do some of the old school stuff. So I can guarantee you some of the run game principles that Sycamore's doing, that is strictly, it probably has some sort of effect to do with Kevin Crandall.
100% it does. I joke with Kevin after the game. I said, how many times, or during the game, he ran one of those sweep plays. I go, how many times I see you run that at Rochelle? Like 1,000. Started laughing. He knows. I mean, it's stuff that he's done all the way back all those years at Rochelle. And,
my favorite Kevin Crandall story, and this is a real quick one, is I can remember when they played Dixon one time, and I was with a friend, and we got to stand on the sidelines, and he told me, before, he's like, now I want you to watch how this Rochelle team runs up to the line of scrimmage, and they put their hand in the dirt. They're not snapping down. They're going into the dirt, hand in the dirt. They're coming at you. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, that's cool. But I could see the ferociousness. I could see the physicality. And then probably the best part of that whole trip was the halftime speech that Kevin got. And I'll just put it this way. There was some choice words, and the kids were dialed in.
And what's cool is Kevin was able to set up his protege to take over. Kyle Kissick, who was his quarterback for Rochelle, ended up joining him on his staff, and he got him lined up to take that program over. And a lot hasn't changed under Kyle. They're still as tough as nails. They run the football, power football, and just tough kids. A lot of two-way kids that just get after it. And that aspect of Rochelle really hasn't changed much. They're still tough as they come. So there you go. That's the Rochelle hour here on
exactly.
It's cool. It's great.
Well, there's a lot of coaches.
Yeah.
Me one of them.
Oh, I know.
Andy Romine, another one at Tuscola. Like, I don't know if Kevin gets enough credit. Now, he is the president of our association, but like, you ask Jeff Boyer at Byron, who one of his mentors is, it's Kevin Crandall. You know?
Well, you see how Byron plays.
They did really well.
You see how Byron plays, and you see how Rochelle did it.
Sort of similar. Sort of similar.
Yeah, but and how Rochelle did it, and they did it with. They didn't have 6'4", 290-pound linemen. Every once in a while they had one, but they'd be more like 5'9" and 170 pounds. They would just beat you on every snap. That's all. That's
physical, how real physical.
Yep. They knew how to play. So, yeah, no doubt about it. Let's talk 8A a little, or 8A. Let's talk 8-man a little bit. Again, I proudly use the NUIC football state rankings for 8-man. So week 3 rankings according to NUIC football and 8-man. Amboy remains number 1. Polo at 2. Milledgeville at 3. Ridgewood at 4. St. Thomas More at 5. South Beloit at 6. West Prairie at 7. Martinsville at 8. Flanagan, Cornell, Woodland at 9. And Cisna Park at 10. West Central, despite being 0-2, getting some votes at poll, Matt, as well. So, again, that is your top 10 and 8-man. I know there were a couple things in 8-man you wanted to go over, I believe.
Well, just I try to kind of pick out a program and pick out a team to talk about. I've been lucky enough. I guess it's because of how many years I've been in the business, or at least, I try to act like I know what I'm talking about and people I know, and I've been lucky enough to shake a lot of hands. Pat Elder over at Ridgewood. That's a co-op between Alwood and Ridgeview. Alwood is my high school. Cambridge is 15 miles down the road. Pat is an old Lincoln Trail opponent that I played against in high school. He obviously had a storied career at Richmond Burton. Was in a state title game against Rochester. He's got a good football team, and he's some of his players. Preston Moriarty is a defensive back. Roy Sandberg is a running back, linebacker. Ryle Couture is the quarterback, and then Taylor Snook is the tight end. They're all returners. They're all skill guys. They've really developed in those first 2 games, and I think what he is saying is how they develop up front is how they're going to be. Patrick Elder's influence obviously are his dad. If the viewers out there don't know, if you had a Mount Rushmore of people in this state that were important to establish the playoffs and what we do as an association, it would be John Elder. And John Elder helped me get into coaching with Pat, and they introduced me to a guy by the name of Coley Welder out at Ridgeview, and I'm forever grateful for that family. And so it's going to be really interesting. I talked to Pat, and the thing he'll say is like, thanks for the compliments, but in terms of where we're at as a football program, there's still some teams to beat in 8-man. I think Amboy and Polo are those teams up north. I think South Beloit's a team up north, and it's going to be interesting to see who kind of develops down south. Last year was West Central with Jason Kirby. This year it could be Ridgewood. And so I'm going to try to go over there in about 3 weeks. They're going to be taking on Amboy at the Cambridge Bowl. And I look forward to that, and here's Pat's exact quote today. He's like, you don't even really know what you're watching after the first 5. Yeah. After the first 5 to 10 minutes, he's like, it's football.
Yeah.
And so, again, I'm going to do the scouting report in 2 weeks here, Coach Tim, and I'll let you know. But from what I hear, Amboy is loaded, and Coach Elder has a really good team at Ridgewood.
So we were hoping to have a guest this week, and it's completely my fault, 100%. I had an incredibly stupid busy week, so I'm going to work on that for next week. So we're going to, Matt and I are going to talk, and we're going to line up a guest. and bring a guest in next week. And I'm thinking Coach Morrow again, probably. I'll reach out
He's
to
ready
him and try to get him lined up. So that is definitely the plan. Hopefully moving forward, we'll definitely start bringing in more guests. We like having guests. So I get tired of Matt talking and Matt gets tired of me talking. So it's good to have someone else to join.
I think we probably break the camera. We need to get somebody else that's a little bit better looking than us. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we can't help it.
We work with what God gave us, and that's about all we could ask for.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
you know, sometimes you get a gigantic pork tenderloin sandwich, and sometimes you get a piece of bread and smash it together, and that's your sandwich. You just roll with what you got. So
yeah.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this bad boy up?
No, you know, I just think some of the conferences are going to really start developing and kind of creating their niche and creating their mentality or their reputation. A team that I kind of did forget to talk about real quick, and I did want to kind of just talk about him, was El Paso Gridley. You know, Cam Schumacher is that big quarterback. He's a left-hander. They got a real physical football team. So we'll see how they kind of develop in that HOIC. It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens in the western side of the state in terms of 1A. If there's going to be anybody else that comes out of there besides Althoff and Camp Point Central. The big football game this week is St. Teresa taking on Central A&M. That'll be a good game. And of course, I'm really looking forward to the Friday night game in Tuscola. A lot of great football. The temperatures are starting to settle in, and I think we're really in store for some really good football.
Yeah, I was out at Lockport today at practice, and a little bit of mist going on, and it was downright, I don't want to say chilly, but it felt really like football for the first time.
It felt football.
So it's good.
Yeah.
All right, pal, we're going to wrap it up. So again, thanks everybody for watching. If you have questions or comments or I don't know, call Matt Leng's home phone. I don't know. You can DM me on Twitter at any time. Matt, I don't think you're not on Twitter, are you? No, Matt.
Well, off and on.
Yeah, well, that's a whole side.
It's either a all or nothing thing.
I don't want to even get down. I don't want to even go down that road with you. So DM me. You can email me here, EDGYTIM at EDGYTIM.com. You can always email me any thoughts or questions. My message board's always open. You can post something there. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your feedback. Appreciate you guys watching. That'll do it for this week. So for Matt Leng, Mr. Handsome, EDGYTIM, thanks for watching, everybody. We will be back next week. And in the meantime, go out and watch a game, will you?